So I'll be handing over to our first speaker. Our first speaker for tonight is Bro Ugu Ekene. So he'll be taking us on
Yeah,
the first
hi.
session.
Hi.
You're welcome, sir.
All right. Please confirm you can hear me.
We can
Yes,
hear
sir,
you.
we can hear you. We can hear you.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Glad to be here. I'm going to start with an apology. Unfortunately, I'm not able to turn on my video. I didn't expect to be outside at this time, but I am outside, so please do pardon me. But I have some slides, and then my slides are going to confuse you, so you don't have to bother about my face. But I'm so happy to be on the call with everybody, and I'm excited about the conversation. Like Nae had said, this is Missions Corner, and the goal is to have conversations. And so we have missionaries here, we have mission helpers here, we have mission enthusiasts here. We have people who are going to be joining the call who have not really heard anything about missions, and that's fine, because what we do in Missions Corner is to engage one another and just have conversation going, so that everybody can really, really, really be fortified. It's going to take all of the world, all of the church, to take all of the gospel to reach all of the world. And this is just part of what we do as Mission Societies to make sure that everybody, can be fully engaged. But really glad to be here on the call, and then looking forward to the conversations. What I want to try to do, if I have my slides, please, media, help me. What I want to try to do is to just lay a basic framework, because we're talking about the future of missions. We're talking about the future of missions. We have 2 sessions today and then tomorrow. And my brother Wise is already here. He's doing more of the more of the talking, more of the engagements. But what I want to try to do for us this evening is to show us the history of missions, because really, when you're talking about the future, you want to start that story from where missions is coming from, right? And there's just something about knowing our history that prepares us for the future. Somebody says that all new news is old news happening to new people. All new news is old news happening to new people. So really, we can learn from history. We can learn from history. And what I'm going to be doing is to just help us trace missionary methods across history. That's going to be like my real focus. Because I understand that, I can't take 15 minutes to talk about all of missions history. I mean, it's an impossible task. So what I'm going to try to do is to just make highlights on the different methods that we have seen in each era. Because literally, Jesus did not give us a method. Jesus gave us a message and a mission. So whilst the mission does not change, the methods can change. Okay, let's see the next slide, please. Introductory thoughts. Next slide, please. The introductory thoughts I have. You're going to recognize. Just a moment, please. Yeah, so you're just going to recognize that mission and the message never change, but the method shifts to become more functional and relevant to every generation. So think about communication. At a particular time, we used to use, telegraphs. Then we went to landlines. Now we have iPhones. You see that this in the next 20 years from now, I'm very sure that we're not going to be using mobile phones the way we use mobile phones. Right. So it's to say that the methods of communication have been changing. The goal is same, but the methods have been changing. So each generation must discern the opportunities, the platforms, and the resources God brings to them to maximize them. That's very important. You see, because God providentially allows us to interact with different kind of resources, different kind of opportunities in different eras, in different seasons. And Christians in that season must be discerning enough to know what is the Lord trying to do. What is the Lord what's the goal of God? What is the vision of God? What is the mind of God with all of the things coming our way? Because listen, technology, and you're going to recognize, technology is amoral. What that means is that technology is neither good nor bad. right? Whoever wields technology determines how technology will be used. It's like money. Money is neither good nor evil. Money in the hand of a good person does good things. Money in the hand of a bad person does terrible things. And so money is amoral, like technology is amoral. And so all the opportunities, the resources that God brings to us in every generation, many a time is gonna be the consequence or the reflections of those resources is really by the people who manage those resources. So we must be discerning enough to know, oh, what God is bringing per season and maximize it. Okay, we are called, look at this now, to be loyal to the mission and the message. Jesus left us a mission, Jesus left us a message, and we are called to be loyal to that message and not necessarily the methods. Okay, so let me start from the very beginning. So the church, next slide please, the church was birthed in Acts chapter 2. The missional assignment of the church was birthed in Acts chapter 2, right? So beginning in Jerusalem, Jesus gave a commission, starting Jerusalem, then Judea, then Samaria, and then to the ends of the earth. We all know this. I want you to recognize that from Acts chapter 2 to somewhere around Acts chapter 12, from Acts chapter 2 to somewhere around Acts chapter 12, when you look at how the disciples, the early church, were engaging with the gospel, they were taking on the mission of God, that helps you see, you can see their heart, and you can see how they played around with the different methods. So if I ask you, what are some of the methods that we can see from that first century church, Acts chapter 2 down to Acts chapter 12, you see that Peter did an open air preaching, and that was when 3,000 souls came into the faith. At some point again, he did preach a message, and 5,000 joined. You could see signs and wonders. You remember that it was Peter's shadow that was healing. You could see what's his name now? The Ethiopian eunuch, and what's his name? Philip. Philip was the guy who used Philip Airlines. The Lord needed to send a message, and the Lord had to use a wonder, and that was how the gospel was communicated. You could see, home churches at that time. There's a lot of home churches. I remember that in Acts chapter 12, when Peter was going to be killed by Herod, remember that the church prayed. The Bible says the church prayed earnestly. Guess what? An angel broke into that room, and even though Peter was asleep, woke Peter up and delivered Peter. But guess where the church were praying? They were praying in the house of Mary, the mother of John Mark. You see that now? And so evangelization of their own word happened by these methods. But when he now came, next slide, when he now came to taking the gospel to the next level, because Jesus said from Jerusalem to Judea and then to Samaria and then to the ends of the earth, when he now came to crossing barriers from Antioch in chapter 12, I believe in chapter 13, from Antioch, they had chosen Barnabas and Paul. They had, prayed for them as they had ministered to the Lord had spoken. And that was the beginning of cross-cultural missions. Yes, after the persecution, you see that in chapter 11 and verse 19, after the persecution, the scattered disciples were taking the message to the Jews in diaspora. But the first time anybody was going to cross culture, and this is very significant for us, the very significant timeline. The first time anybody was going to cross culture to a people that were not the Jews, that means to the Gentiles, it was Paul and Barnabas, and they were commissioned for this. Now, I want you to notice the methods that these two guys used. You didn't see Peter and all those guys who were engaging in the first century church in the first phase doing a lot of apologetics. But this time, you now see a lot of apologetics because you have people from different Gentiles, had served different gods. They had different values. There was no common ground, as it were. And so, not as many common grounds as the Jews had. And the disciples of Jesus. So this time they were crossing cultures. They needed to now start using apologetics. You now see Paul was using epistles and letters, and then the church planting in different city centers. Paul was not particularly planting churches in rural settlements. Paul was planting churches in urban centers. And that's very important because as I begin to go through the history, you can now start seeing how all of this is coming together, how some of the things we're doing, we pick them up in the first phase of history, the second phase of history. Now till today, we still do apologetics, right? And you can tell why we do apologetics now. So you see that they did apologetics because they were trying to communicate to the Gentiles who had, you know, a radically different orientation, a radically different value system. Yeah. So we now cross over quickly to the Roman Empire. Next slide, please. You will now see that believers at this time had two struggles, or it was actually a season of a lot of challenges, you know, from the 1st to the 4th century, a lot of challenges. You know, we don't have the time to talk about that, but notice that they had two categories of problem. There was the external problem, where they had intense persecution and opposition, and then of course there was the internal problem, where they had, you know, the emergence of heresies. There was a lot of doctrinal conflicts. This is at this time where all those are councils, the Council of Nicaea, the councils of Chalcedon, and all of those councils began to arise, because of course they needed to clarify all the statements of faith. They needed to, you know, clearly say what, you know, Jesus left for us. So you have the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, and all of that. Okay, so the mission of God, even though there was a lot of challenges at this time, prospered in this season, even amidst the challenges. I need you to notice some of the methods used at this time. There was apologetics, of course. There was martyrdom. This was the time where, you know, a lot of our believers, a lot of our brothers and sisters were being killed. Tertullian at this point had even said that the blood of the saint, so that anytime a martyr is being killed, that his blood doesn't just speak in eternity, it speaks in time. Yeah. And so there was martyrdom, and martyrdom was such a providentially now was such an effective way to spread the gospel, because you got them asking questions. What really is about these people that are willing to die for their faith? And that's why when you think about the church in northern Nigeria and in sub-Saharan Africa, you many times you see that they are stronger, because there's just something martyrdom does. It communicates our faith in ways that affluence and influence cannot communicate. Of course, there was community witness, but let me quickly run to the medieval and the pre-Reformation time. This is 5th to 15th century. Now, after the fall of the Roman Empire, this is the Western world had collapsed. And you can see that in Daniel's prophecy. That's why the Bible is so powerful. My God, the Bible is so powerful. Do you know that, you know, the Bible in Daniel's prophecy had predicted the emergence of, you know, Greece rising to world power after Rome? It's so interesting that the Bible predicted Alexander Great conquering the entire world. So powerful. You know, predictive prophecy is so powerful, but we don't have the time to talk about predictive prophecy this evening. But look at what happened after Western civilization had collapsed. There was a decline. Missions in the West, you know, seemed slow-paced. You know, this was the time where Islam was growing. Remember that in 6th BC, that's when Islam began to emerge very forcefully. Yeah. And of course that it grew in the east generally, but look at some of the methods. Even though there was like a lot of the slow pace, but God never is out of ideas. God is never shortchanged. And so you could see the monastic witness, the art. So remember people like Michelangelo will draw. You know, there was a lot of architecture back in the day, you know, Bible copying. So that's something that by the providence of God did with the monasteries. So because of the monasteries, there was a lot of Bible copying. So there was a lot of, you know, textual analysis. And that's why we have, you know, the clear message captured in the Bible for us, the message of Jesus captured in the Bible for us, because of this season, because you had a lot of monks who were, you know, literally, you know, spending all of their days to make sure that the Bible is well captured in writing. Okay, let me quickly run. I see that I don't have a lot of time, but let me quickly run to the Moravians, the Reformation, and the printing press. So this is somewhere around the 16th and the 17th century. And these are the three key highlights for me. There are several other factors, but I just wanted to highlight these three. These are the three key highlights for me in the 16th and 17th century that I believed led to the impact and the drive of God's missional plans and purposes for our world. Number one was the Reformation. You remember at this time, Martin Luther had just got the revelation on Romans chapter 10, the just shall live by faith alone. powerful revelation came to him, and that whole movement started with John Calvin and all the great guys. And remember, the Reformation every October 15th, I believe. So in the next couple of days, we're going to celebrate the Reformation. So it's so powerful what happened because of the Reformation, and it coincided with the printing press. And so at this time, people could generate materials, pamphlets, tracts, different stuff could be written, and it was so powerful. It was so powerful. And that led to, great harvest in that time, because at this time God was just sparking something anew again. The springtime was coming again. So it looked like Christianity had been in the winter for so long, but because of the Reformation, it looked like springtime was coming again. The leaves were budding again, like Aaron's staff. The leaves were budding again. But now something else that was striking for me as I think about history and missions is what God did with the Moravians. Count Zinzendorf had got some people, and then they were in a community, and these guys were giving to the Lord. They had community. They were trying to, get back the Acts chapter 2 kind of life. And it was so powerful what they did. Remember that it was those guys that had prayed 100 years, unbroken prayer chain. In fact, it was after the 100 years of prayer, unbroken prayer chain, that the first great awakening started. Very interesting, because you now realize that revival doesn't happen unless prayer goes up to God. At the threshold of the 100th year, 100 years of prayer, unbroken prayer, and this is true, it's well captured in the books. After the 100 days of prayer, the first great awakening started, and then that's where the John Wesleys emerged, the George White emerged, and so much began to happen. Like I said, this was that season where after God had sparked something with the Reformation, much of the authentic gospel began to be communicated. So look at some of the methods. Sacrificial living. So the Moravians would go and live with lepers. So a Moravian will become a leper just so he can reach lepers. A Moravian will go and become a slave so that he can reach slaves. So that was sacrificial living at work. And so when you see some of our missionaries, even in our day, like I saw that some of our brethren here from Capro, some of the commitments that Capro makes, sacrificial living. They leave estates, they leave tech jobs, they leave influence, they leave their certificates, and they go to live with the people who really, I don't want to say they're above them, but they come so low in humility so that they can reach them. Listen, it was the Moravians that started it, or at least it was the Moravians that amplified it. Okay, so that tracts and pamphlets, tent making, cultural integration. So what we have some of our missionaries do now in the fields now, living like the Muslims, is cultural integration. It all happened with the Moravians. And it was so powerful what God did with them, so powerful. But let me quickly run to modern day missions as I begin to tie this up. So remember that, and this is one I'm sure many of us are familiar with now, modern day missions. This is the emergence of the European missionaries, the American missionaries. So some of the names, the popular names, the biographies you read, William Carey, Livingstone, Hudson Taylor, the Fanny Crosbys, the Jude Adonirams, the Sankey was the guy that sang for D.L. Moody, the Charles Parhams. So a lot of missionaries at this time began to go, to the east from the west, Baptist missionaries. This is the time where societies were formed, Baptist societies, people take the gospel to India, to Africa, and all of these amazing places. So this is really where missions became really dynamic. The methods at this time became very dynamic. So hymn singing. So songs now capture the gospel. So when you think about all of the beautiful hymns that we have, really, when you think about the beautiful hymns that we have, it is gospel encapsulated. Just think about Charles Wesley. Think about Fanny Crosby. Think about Sankey. Think about all the beautiful hymns that we have. They are so gospel-centric. And for a season, that was how God communicated the gospel, right? Because when somebody sings a gospel-centered song, the person has received the gospel. And that was so powerful. Him singing medicine, land exploration. At this point, they were crossing over to the east, coming to Africa for land exploration with the colonial masters and all that. Cultural adaptation, education was part of it. In fact, at this point, when the European missionaries come, especially when they came to Africa, before they even start thinking about church planting, they would bring about social infrastructure. So they would think about building a school, building a town hall, and building a healthcare center before they do church planting. Because at this time, church planting was not the method or the amplified method for this era. Are you following that now? So methods change. The mission does not change, but methods change. Right. Then Africa receives the gospel. And this is very strategic for us because this is the trigger of revival. From the 1800s to the 1900s, North Africa, of course, had received the gospel well earlier than, even in the third AD, they had received the gospel. People like Tertullian were from Africa, people like Ignatius of Hippo, they were from Africa. But the Western Africa and the other parts of Africa only received the gospel at this time. You see that one of the major highlights was Ajayi Crowther. Remember Ajayi Crowther? He was a guy, they had captured him from Nigeria, and then they were on ship. And of course, this time slave trade was already banned. So the slave ship was intercepted, and he was freed, and he was sent to Sierra Leone because that's where all the slaves were sent to. That's why they call it Freetown. So he was sent to Sierra Leone, and it was in Sierra Leone that he met Jesus, and then he got discipled, and eventually he was mobilized and deployed back to Nigeria. Of course, he transliterated the Bible into Yoruba, and it's one of the reasons why the gospel spread very, very, very quickly in Western Africa, Western Nigeria, and Western Africa generally. Yeah, and of course there are also figures like Reverend Beachman and Freeman. Remember, he's the guy, the Methodist guy in Ghana. So anyways, so I just want you to pay attention to the methods. One-on-one evangelism was popular at this time, church planting, schools, education, Bible societies, and this was how they captured. But let me quickly talk about the 20th and the 21st century, because what we see there is exponential expansion. God always works providentially. Look at how God has used all the situations, even the situations that did not seem like good situations, like the persecution. God used all of that to accentuate his purpose. So look at how there was exponential expansion. The gospel message had expanded exponentially through the aid of several missional methods in this era. So think about radio and TV. Think about mission conferences. Think about crusades. In one crusade, Billy Graham recorded 1.1 billion people in 1.1 million people in attendance. Digital missions became popular, media-driven worship, the creative arts, entrepreneurship and community development. All of this, God has used it for his purpose. But look at the future outlook, and this is what we can expect, as we go into the coming days. AI and virtual reality is coming to stay. You don't need to fear about it. You just need to be strategic about it. Online global churches, holistic missions, business and gospel, the creative arts. Sometimes I think about it. Sometimes I follow some of these the Bamiloye's, what's his name, Damilola Bamiloye, and I watch a video and I check how many viewers he has had on a Sunday evening. Some of these programs and movies he has. And friends, 1 million viewers in a night. 1 million viewers in a night. That's spectacular, because none of our gospel singers who were singing hymns back in the day, who were doing medical missions back in the day, have been able to get these numbers. And that's creative arts working. Look at what the Gen Zs are doing with skits. Just go on Instagram and see what people are doing with skits. I need us to know that God's gospel is prevailing. God's gospel is prevailing, and it's going to continue to prevail. So there's no need to fear. Hybrid discipleship, you're going to see hybrid discipleship happening. People are going to be discipled both online and in person, and it's going to be fantastic. There's great news ahead of us. But let me give us our final reflections, because Wise is here, is going to take us on. The future will be very different from now. Compare the first and the 21st centuries in terms of method impact. So look at that. Peter preached a message, 3,000 people got saved. Billy Graham preached a message, 1.1 billion people received that message. That's, and that took some time. Look at what Pastor Jerry, you may not particularly like what he says, you may not particularly like all he does, but in a day you can have 2 million people listening to him. That's powerful. That is powerful. Now, can you imagine what the future would look like? And that's why we are here tonight and throughout this weekend. We want to talk about how should we posture ourselves? What do we need to do as missionaries, as mission helpers, so that we can harvest all God wants to harvest? Because listen, the light is green. It's not red. It's not yellow. It's green. It's a time to go. And so I believe that, as we share and have those conversations around the future of missions, we'll learn more. We'll see how we can be more strategically positioned to be a blessing to our world. God's mission will not fail. It cannot fail. And with our hands, God is going to do much with us. Thank you, everybody. And that's my time. God bless you. Nay, I think you're muted. I'm not sure. I can see your message, but you're muted. Well, let me just bring up Wise. He does an amazing work in the intersection of tech and missions. He's very, very involved with missions in the US, and he has such amazing background in tech, and he's just the right person for this conversation as he speaks to us about the mission fields that are emerging and the way we need to position ourselves to make the best of the seasons that to come. With I would have said with a shouting ovation, but you can't shout. But please, with a clap, with a virtual clap, please welcome my brother, Mr. Wise. I call him Dr. Wise. He doesn't want to go get a PhD, but I'm sure he's going to get a PhD in AI. He's going to get a PhD in AI. Somebody say amen. Okay, let's welcome Bro Wise as he comes up. Okay, Wise, you're welcome. Great.
Thank you so much, brother. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I see some names, some of my seniors are here as well. I really appreciate you joining. Thank you, brother Kenneth. Thank you for the mission titles for putting this together. I believe this is a very powerful program because we're all going to learn this weekend and see how we can take from where we are to where we need to be. We can take some of the knowledge we get here and how we can translate it. Brother Kenneth has always been an inspiration to me and my family, and there's so much work he's done. We have my family, our both families pretty much know each other. We communicate regularly, and that's always been a wonderful time. Uh, Today, I'm going to be sharing quickly on things about the missions and AI. Let me share my screen. Okay. So while we're waiting for that to get set up, so I listened to the introduction. I know we have some people from the Calvary missions, and there's a brother in Obudu, brother Emmanuel, and then also Sister Deborah in Niger State. I mean, it's just awesome to hear that. To hear that people are actually doing missions, of pretty much giving their life to missions, and it's a wonderful thing. I remember back a few years ago, we used to go to different villages at least once a year or once a semester in school, and then we'll spend the weekend there ministering to different people, to different needs as well. I never thought that someday I will be doing that, on my own, or doing that in some way, some fashion, and also leading people as well. And today, it's a reality on ground. Um, right now, my wife and I, we've been ministering to the homeless in Houston, Texas. God has put us there. I started about just a little over 3 years ago, and we knew that we couldn't leave Houston anymore, so we are stuck here. I mean, we can visit other places, but we are stuck right here. So we go around to visit the homeless. We go out in the streets, and some people say, "You mean there are homeless people in the U.S.?" Yes, they are. It's everywhere. There are homeless people in the US. And so we go with food and stuff, and we go out to preach the gospel. And over time, God started leading us in different ways. We started going out to wanted to see miracles happen. We saw different kinds of healings. We saw cancer leave, the lame walk. People with stroke. Eventually got up, start moving. Then we started seeing people, leave the streets. Get out of the street, get out from all the drugs and all the things going on. And so, okay, so I can share my screen right now. All right. Okay, so let me make this bigger. All right. So we started seeing a lot of things happen, and as time went on, we had more people. I mean, there were several times that there are times that we'll go out to minister. We have maybe 5, 10 people join us, and next thing you know, the church now called us to lead it, and we started having up to like 20, 30 people going out to minister. And so there are people that one of the greatest things that we saw initially we were going out to we just wanted to see people get saved, see people get healed. It was always fun. You go out, you want to just see, you're expecting a miracle. You're expecting a miracle to happen, and you're like looking forward to it. But over time, God started leading us, and we started having people join us and started training. And the next thing is that these same people, we started seeing them, get people saved, get people baptized in the Spirit, get people healed. And, it was just awesome to see that begin to multiply. And the next thing, God started leading us more into other areas in terms of discipling people as well. And so right now we're in that process where we run a Bible study, a general Bible study where we have a couple of these people every week, and then we also have a personal one-on-one every week as well. And truly, truly, God has funded these things to ensure that people are saved and discipled, and we are seeing a good turnout of people being transformed as well. I don't have pictures yet to share on that, but definitely one of these days, maybe if I'm invited again, I get to share some of these things to see what God has done and what God is really doing right here. So I also believe that the same thing is happening with some of these missions as well, Calvary missions. I'm so happy to see that, to see people doing that. I know I can learn a lot from what's going on, from people that are speaking this week. Um, so let me start missions and AI. Missions and AI. I wish I went before Brother Ekene because he really did take a good part of my slides. So if you see some things repeated, just know that he copied me. Okay. All right. No, he did not. I'm just joking. So I'm used to teaching online, and I'm used to it being very quiet. So I would ask everybody, if you don't want to share your screen, that's fine. Just please put in the chat, I'm here. Let me know those that are here. If you are here, just say I'm here. Let me see it in chat. Let me see those that are with us. Just put it in the chat. Say I'm here. All right. I'm looking at the chat. No one. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Sandra. Okay. Thank you. My wife is here. Thank you. Pastor Benga, thank you. The Karen, thank you. Peace, thank you. That's Sister Deborah, that is Jesus girl. Thank you. Sister Joy, thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, that's great. So missions and AI, let's quickly go into that. Uh, Let me go in. All right. So think about this scenario. Imagine for many of us, if you have a teenage child now, or let's say, remember when you were teenagers, imagine your mother tells you at 8 a.m., hey, get up, Tom, or John, get up, go clean your room. I want your room cleaned up today before I get back. At 8 a.m., she tells John to do that. Then by noon, she follows up. Hey, I'm sending you a text to remind you to clean your room. And then by 5 p.m., she follows up. Don't forget, I said you should clean your room. Oh, also by 2 p.m., she also says, don't forget I said you should clean your room. 5 p.m., she says, I'm closing from work. Make sure you clean your room before I get to the house. And then at 8 p.m., she comes to the house and she finds that the house is messy. How do you think she would feel? All right. How do you think she would feel? And many times this is the reality, because let me go to the next slide. Many times this is the reality of we Christians, is that in Matthew chapter 28, verse 19, Jesus tells us, he says, go and make disciples, baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Then in Mark, he says the same thing. Go into the world and preach the gospel. In Luke, he says the same thing. You know, he even said them, he says, even wait here until you are endued with power, but then you are going to go preach the gospel. He says, if you look at it, he says, the Messiah will suffer and rise from the dead on the third day, and repentance for the forgiveness of sins to be preached in his name to all nations, beginning at Jerusalem. He also goes into, even in John and several places, he did mention them, says, mentioned to them, go and preach the gospel. And then in Acts chapter 1, verse 8, it says, you shall receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you'll be witnesses. So he has mentioned it multiple times that, hey, this gospel should be preached to them. And so sometimes, we look at this, is that sometimes I realize that, like, we say, oh, we are like the teenage boy or the teenage child, the other boy or girl that decides not to clean their room, but they've been told multiple times. And when something is said multiple times, it tells us that it's important for that to be done. All right. So preaching the gospel, and one of the things I want to also mention is that for those that are just that I know missionaries know this already, but those that are new or they're just learning about this, I want us to know that preaching the gospel is not a missionary job. Preaching the gospel is not a preacher's job, it's not a pastor's job, it's a Christian job. The moment you say the moment you've called the name of the Lord, you are by default called to preach the gospel. You must preach it to your family, your friends. There's nobody that has a special calling to preach the gospel. The only people, there's no specific person. Pastors are not specifically called to preach the gospel. It's everybody. Everybody should preach the gospel. And so Jesus Christ has given us this mission. And so today we're going to be going deeper in the different ways we can utilize this. And I'll go into a bit of history first, and then we'll go into the future and see what we have in stake. So now I say, first slide I have here says, don't be a Luddite. How many of us are familiar with that term, Luddite? If you are, if you're familiar with it, just say yes, or if you are not, just say no. I'd like to see it in the chat. If you're familiar, say yes. If you are not familiar with the name Luddite, just say no. All right, let's see those who are typing in the chat. Please, I'd like us to participate just in the chat. Okay, no, okay, that's fine. All right, anyway, let's continue. So please, let's participate in the chat. Now, probably I will lag at not this one. Okay, that's very funny. All right, so a Luddite usually is a person that's opposed to new technology or ways of working, but that's not how it started. So in the 18th century, the textile industry in the UK, in England generally, was booming, and so they brought these devices, these machines that could do the textile job better than the way a person would do it, and to do it for a longer time. And the workers were against it. How many of these things sounds familiar, where they bring a machine to do something and people are against it? Okay, so the workers were against it. And the next day, some of them started rioting. In some cases, they went into these factories and they began to break these devices, these machines that were used to build, that were used in the textile industry, breaking them. And this fictional name came up called the Luddite. It came up from somebody called Lord. It wasn't a real person, Ludd. It was fictional. They said, oh, this person went to break somewhere, and somehow the name caught up, and they called people that did that Luddites. And over time, there were people that opposed technology were also referred to Luddites. Even up to the time of when telephones came out, we also had people that opposed telephones. When electricity came out, as a matter of fact, if you Google this, you will see a cartoon of where journalists posted the what could happen having electricity, the dangers of electricity, and different things. People were protest against the use of calculators in the 70s. So this has always been so. So we say don't be a Luddite. So let's look at some evolution of technology in spreading the gospel. So we have several major technology shifts in our world that has happened in spreading the gospel. As a matter of fact, this has really changed it. And if you notice, we have printing press, telegrams, radio, televisions, internet, social media, and mobiles, and today we have the AI. But one of the things you notice about this list here is that these are all communication channels. Now we know that somewhere in the middle there was the electricity came out, the cars came out, airplanes came out, but these ones are communication channels, and that makes a difference in technology, difference in what happens in our landscape. All right, so let's just quickly look at some of the printing press. Printing press, was invented by the Johannes Gutenberg, and one interesting fact that I saw in this is that the Bible was one of the major printed books or documents when the printing press was invented. As a matter of fact, even Gutenberg himself was a Christian, was a believer. The Bible was a major book printed when it was invented. And just like every other thing, there were controversies. People were against it. Some people said, that first of all, there was people like the scribes complained that, this is going to cause job displacement. So we had the scribes that wrote the Bibles, and that was a very painful procedure. The scribes wrote the Bibles made copies of it. In some cases, when they wanted to write the name Yahweh, they had to go shower and come back. But then Gutenberg has this where it's being printed. So they complained about job displacement. They complained about low quality. The people talked about misinformation. People talked about distrust of new ideas. How many of us have seen these complaints recently in some way, some fashion? How many of us have seen these complaints where people are complaining about a new technology displacing jobs? Yes, you can see that this is not new. There's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new under the sun. Like what Ekene said. He said new ideas are old problems are just repeated to new people. It's nothing new. We've all seen this thing before. As a matter of fact, if you read for that, I had one of the controversies that sparked was that it was threatening the power structure, because only the people that were rich enough to buy what the scribes have written could have it. But now you can print a page of the Bible easily. You can print multiple pages overnight. With the printing press, you can, they have it where they stamp. It's almost like a stamp. They push it down, and you can do many of it and distribute it to many people at once. So now the power structure, those who were in power to have the Bible and they want to read it, or control those that listen because they couldn't get a copy, that is being destroyed, because now everybody has a copy. And so, but there were controversies. Yeah, people were against it, right? Then you have the telegraph. The telegraph also came on board somewhere in the in about 1855, a little older than the 1850 you have right there, because in 1858 we have the first telegraph between the Europe and US. And one of the first things to realize is that the telegraph, the first message that was sent from Europe to North America to the US was, it says, Europe and America are united by telegraph. Glory to God in the highest. On earth, peace and good will towards men. And the second sentence is obviously is what we know. We know that the shepherd said, what the shepherds outside Bethlehem heard. The angelic host said, peace and goodwill to earth. When Jesus was born, this was the first message. Now, I want you to just picture that happening today. There's a new technology coming, and we want to use it. And the first message will be a quote from the Bible. This is absurd to think that today, but that was the reality. All right. And also, we had mission societies that used it in London, in the US as well, to transfer messages. And this also helped in spreading the gospel. And obviously, like every new technology, there will always be controversy. So we had, coordination in hostile colonized territories, or fear of overreaching as well. That was also there. I put this is just a personal love for this man, Richard Wurmbrand. He used Morse code to preach the gospel. And oh, by the way, the telegraph was made by a man called Samuel Morse, who invented the Morse code that was used. He pretty much uses dot and dashes to transfer messages. And I use it. I like the story of this man. I followed the story for a while, learning about him. Richard Wurmbrand, he used Morse code to preach the gospel. He couldn't use telegraph, but he was in prison where he would preach the gospel using Morse code over to somebody else who was on the other end, because he was in isolation and he couldn't meet with people. But it's just interesting to see how that helped to preach the gospel even in prison, even in solitary confinement where he couldn't meet anybody else. All right. Now we look forward to the radio. Radios came out, somewhere in the 20s and in the 30s, and this was used by a lot of famous preachers. Amy Seppi McPherson, Billy Sunday, Charles Fuller. There were many more people that used it in the 20s. One of fact, Amy really knew how to use it. I was watching some of our videos and how she would talk on the radio like it's captivating, even if it's about almost 100 years ago today. Today, yeah, it's about 100 years ago, 100 years today, but she's still captivating. And like everything else, there were controversies, And if you read some of these things, you will see that these are no longer, they are not new. It's, you see, entertainment versus reverend. People talk about, oh, it was more entertainment than being in church where where there's reverence there. And the people talked about, sensationalism or disembodied voices saying that there's no anointing in the radio. Okay, you're talking about, oh, there's no power listening in the radio. There's no anointing. How would that be? They talked about how the radio would take over people going to church. People will no longer want to go and meet. They talked about how people will commercialize the faith. They'll be asking for money and the rest, or how they will send messages to accommodate everything else and not preach the gospel properly. And these were things that people that came out during that time. How many of us have heard these things before? Heard these things today? We've all do. We've heard these things with social media as well. It's not new. It's not new. All right. Television, the same thing came out. We had Oral Roberts, Billy Graham. I know that Oral Roberts, Oral Roberts was a very was a very interesting. Was very interesting to watch his story. I happened to have been in his son Richard had happened to been in my church a couple of times, and I happened to hear him talk about his father. There were times that they were even against him. They called him the Hollywood preacher. Very true. They were against him for putting gel on his hair. It was just weird, like, oh, you're on TV. Why do you have to make your hair look this good? And the rest, oh, why are you showing miracles on TV? Why are you having miracles on TV? Why we've all heard these things. It's no longer new. There were people who were going, there were scandals, they were against him, they were just saying different things. Not that he did anything wrong or he stole money or something, but there were many people like that spoke against this. They talked about, oh, they are teaching the prosperity gospel on TV, or they questioned their authenticity in different ways. But you have Billy Graham also used the TV in the 50s. You have Fulton Sheen as well, who was a Catholic priest as well, who was you can see some of his videos, very, very powerful, very, very powerful. See some of his videos on YouTube today. So they are nested part of TV. Then obviously in the 90s and in the 2000s, we see, everybody jumped on it, jumped on the internet to use it. Let me correct that. Not everybody. Very few people jumped on the internet to use it. But same word we saw, there were people talking about, theological oversight, misinformation, like the same misinformation they talked about in the printing press. Almost 200 years before now, they said the same thing. They said it to weaken the physical church community. The same set of things they said in the 20s, they said it later on as well. So this controversial and concerns that people had are always not new. We also have the social media era now. Everybody's jumping on it. But something that I want to say is that when you look at the printing press and the telegraph and the radio, the first set of people to jump in immediately, one of the first group of people to jump in as they were being invented were Christians. In many cases, in the first two, the printing press and the telegraphs were invented by Christians. They brought these new ideas and they used it mostly for the gospel. When the radio came out, one of the first set of people to jump into it were believers, were Christians, to use it. How somehow we got to the point where we begin to doubt it, because the concerns they're the same, the controversies are the same, they haven't changed at all. But how somehow we begin to doubt it and begin to say, oh, we shouldn't use this anymore, it's strange, because Christians have always used it to spread the gospel. And so you have the social media today. Most churches use it. As a matter of fact, I would say a lot of churches or a lot of Christian groups or missionaries should learn the best way to use it, to harness it fully, not just I'm posting on this or I'm posting on that. No, harness it to the best to get it. And there will always be those controversies. They'll say, oh, people are not theologically deep, or they go through they're doing short form, or whatever it is. There will always be those concerns by Christians and non-Christians. But most importantly, Christians should harness it. Now, let's go into the age of AI today. Now, let's talk about this. How can we use AI in the mission field? Now, I've heard a lot of people condemn the use of AI. I'm someone that work with AI all the time. I use it daily. I do different things daily. I integrate it. I even build solutions for clients as well. I use it at my place of work as well. So I'm fully deep in it, and I can tell that they are the concerns, and I'll get to that, right? But also I want us to look at how we can use it in the mission field. And there are multiple ways, but I'm going to share 4 major ones right now. One is languages. Language barrier is still a major challenge for many people. Like, I'll tell you, even for me in the US, I still get to places where I still need to speak Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish. So there are times I would have an interpreter, a translator next to me, and that's sometimes my wife picked up Spanish, is able to speak Spanish. I've had friends that are able to speak Spanish, just like the way you go to a program in you go to a redemption camp program, and the Nigeria is speaking, you have somebody interpreting Yoruba. I've had to have that for someone speaking Spanish for me in the US. All right, so language barrier can actually be can be brought down with AI. Sermons and videos can be translated using AI, such as AI tools such as Serenite Voice, which is one of the tools we have today. And I do have a special offer for everybody today. Is you can take your YouTube videos, you can translate it into multiple languages. If you can clone voices, you can dub it, you can even put subtitle. You can do that today, such that if I go to a place where they don't speak the language I speak, right? I can always find a way to pass down the gospel. Let me tell you this thing. This is very interesting. There are times that I've gone to speak with somebody that speaks only Spanish, and I preach the gospel to the person using Google Translate. I will take it and I'll say what I want to say, translate it, and let the person listen. The person will speak in Spanish and I'll read it and say, okay, and I will go back and forth. And it's painstaking sometimes, but it may take about 20, 30 minutes, because I'm going back and forth, something that I could have done in 10 minutes and just give them the gospel and pray with them. But take a while, but eventually the gospel is preached. And many times, many of them have gotten saved, gotten healed, gotten delivered. So today with AI now, we can translate voices into we can clone voices. We can also take text translator, devotionals, notes, Bibles, and we can translate it into different languages. I think there are about, is it about 3,000 languages now in the world, or even somewhere around there, or even more. I mean, I know only in Nigeria alone, officially we record, 300, or somebody helped me with that number. I think last time I remember we recorded 250. But in my times of traveling, I believe that we are up to 500 languages. Okay, 250. I believe there are actually more. There are languages that people have not, recorded yet. So we can translate those languages that people can understand, and we can speak the language of their time. If you read through history, one of the first time we see somebody be killed within the church was the guy called John Wycliffe, and he came even before a lot of before the Moravians, before he came I think in the 16th century or something. And he said that the Bible was preached to people with the language of their time. So he was so keen at translating the language from Latin, channeling the Bible to, I think, to German, because people were always reading in Latin. So you can begin to translate the Bible right now, or translate devotion as a note to the language of the people that understand, without having to pay an interpreter, without having to look for many other sources and say, okay, who can I reach that can help me interpret this? One of the big, and I think Kennedy talk about Samuel Ajayi Crowther, right? He was the one that translated the Bible to Yoruba. As far back as maybe 20 years ago, I knew people that still use that same Bible, not a revised version, the same exact translation that he wrote. And I believe that that's one of the greatest thing that has ever happened to the to the Yoruba in the Yoruba society, people that speak Yoruba, is that the Bible was written in a language they can read and understand. That somebody can read the Bible in Yoruba, and I'm sure, and we have people that have done it in Igbo and Hausa and in different other languages. But that I believe that that's the one of the greatest things that could have happened, that the Bible can be available in the language, and so we can do more. You know, I'm able to translate some videos into French speaking people, Spanish speaking people, that they can understand the same message that I'm listening to in English. Number two, we have you can customize chatbots. There are many LLMs. So LLMs means the large language models like ChatGPT and Claude and the rest in the world today. However, they are trained on random data. So I would advise anybody, while it's okay to use ChatGPT and Claude and all these to do your research, but also know that they are trained on everybody's ideas. So they are not always the best source for accuracy. All right. You must always look for other ways to do your research while you use those tools. But with chatbots today, with customer chatbots, you can begin to train specific data or specific kinds of sermon or Bible notes without incorrect doctrines. You can put together correct doctrines today and say, you know what, I want to train a chatbot that can be used to answer questions in places that I cannot reach. All right. So for example, there are very few teachers I trust fully. One of the teachers that I trust is Kenneth Hagin. Most of us, if not all of us, have listened to Kenneth Hagin, or maybe you've heard about him. But his messages are Bible based. You can always track everything he says with the Bible. I don't think I've heard him say anything erroneous, but maybe he has, maybe by mistake or something. But his doctrines are always can always be checked in the Bible, and he will say this, and he will say it in his messages. But you can take those messages, you can transcribe them, and create customized chatbots that can begin to answer questions, one for you, but also questions for that other people can have that you cannot reach. Instead of them going to ChatGPT to get wrong doctrine, they can go to your own solutions. And also that's your solution can also be in multiple languages. Your chatbots can also be in multiple languages so that people can understand in their own language as well. So even in the mission field, you can begin to find ways to reach people, right? In ways, even if you don't speak their language, or you don't have all the answers, but creating those solutions that can be there for them to answer those, for a place where they can get the answers to those questions. Next one is we also have the AI powered social media evangelist, and this is just one of I call it social media evangelist. We can have different names for that. One of my friends actually showed me this and I thought it was very powerful, and I want to even make that available at the end of this presentation. Is that we created there are many social media forums, right? Facebook, Reddit, Instagram, Quora, whatever, they are unlimited. And what uh this guy did was to, I know let me put it this way. I know two people that actually do evangelize on social media. They do it like almost a full-time job, almost like a full-time job. Is one of them, he goes into all the groups on Facebook that have, let's say, a witchcraft group, any witchcraft groups is there. He finds witchcraft groups, he finds I think is it anxiety groups, and he lists and sees the post and he comments to each one of them. Any comment so where people are saying, oh, we are gathering here for this, he will put a tract, he will put the gospel, pray this prayer if you need this help. He will respond, like, not in an insulting way, just pushing the gospel that way. The other friend I have, what he did was, it's a very smart thing, and I put the steps there, is that he created a Reddit account, and he used AI so he created a Reddit account that is monitored with an AI agent. And basically what it does is that it follows different communities like that says anxiety, help, spiritual needs. Just similar names like that, and it will read different posts. Okay, to read different posts from different people, and then if there's a post that seems like somebody needs help, the AI will respond to that person first, and then the first response will be to the AI. And once that person respond back, he personally will now step in and then start messaging the person on by himself. Now the AI stops messaging the person, and at this point now he starts messaging the person directly on on their DM, or one on one. And over time, I think he started doing it earlier this year. I think maybe about, I think in March, either March or February. And today he told me, he said only on this platform right now we've had close to 50 people get saved already on the platform, and he only does it with one account. Okay, so he uses that method, integrating AI to send the initial message already, and then he has people getting saved. And I think about it is that, what if he goes further to gather those people and begin to disciple them one on one? The number of things that can happen from there is just is you can't fathom that, because there's no end to what you can do by using that platform, or by using that system to do it. So that's another one. Now let me go to the next one. I don't know how much time. Okay. Well, can I please let me know when my time is getting close, because I don't want to go over time. Okay.
Wise, I think that we're already over time. It may be important to start wrapping up so that we can open it up for more conversation and questions. I already see some people already have some questions for you. It may be good to have that answered before we wrap up.
You know what? So let me go to this last part quickly, and then I'll start answering the questions. I just need, maybe give me 2-3 minutes to finish this last part. Okay. So there are three groups. There are three groups in AI that I divide AI to, because I teach AI. And there are three groups. There's a user group. These are people that use ChatGPT to do what you need to do. There's the okay. These are people that you use ChatGPT or you use Gemini, you ask questions, you use whatever tools you can use to help you, your emails and stuff like that. Then you have the integrators. These are people that integrate AI in a specific system. And then finally, you have the developers, right? These are people that build the systems themselves. They train models, they train these different parts. But when it comes to the mission field, and I think this might help the first question. It said, how can someone who doesn't have a background in AI do any of this innovation? Yes, so this is the first part, is that know where you are first. So if you are in the user group, you're an integrator or the developer, depends on your skill. Everybody can be in the user part of it, right? So here are examples of how you can use it today, right? So you're leveraging the AI tools to preach, teach, and disciple people, right? So in some cases, you can use AI tools to design flyers. You can use it to record and dub sermons. So for example, I showed us Serenade Voice. You can go on Serenade Voice and take a video that you feel has the gospel and translate it to a language of your choice that's available. You can for example, I gave an example here. You can use a missionary in Zamfara can use Grammarly or Google Translate to improve their bilingual newsletters. So you can translate it to a new language. Then for the integrators, you can begin to integrate AI into a process. For example, we have a missionary that builds website where users can chat with an AI trained Bible in Portuguese. Or a church can build a chatbot that helps discipleship with LLMs. So there are different tools to this, to using this, and this part does not even require coding as much. Finally, the developer side is the part of people that will develop the solution. So you go there, you see what the problem is, and you begin to develop a groundbreaking solution that can help more people. So imagine it was a model that can translate a tribal dialect that anybody can copy and say, okay, oh, with this now, let's say now ChatGPT has several languages, but doesn't have all the languages, right? So somebody create a model that can help with Swahili or in Hausa or in a language that is so unique to a group of people, that now, because you've created that system already, everybody else can now say, oh, you know what, I need to, the user that wants to translate their newsletter or their message to Igbo or to a more specific language can now say, oh, let me use this model to translate, let me use this tool. Can you translate this for me? And so it will begin to translate for them. So you have that. You also have researchers can partner with mission boards to analyze unreached groups, take the data and recommend strategies. All right. So we have people that can begin to build that if you're in the developer side. And every part of this group is very important. So yeah, my guidelines. This is just some guidelines that I put together, and I think this will be the last part. I would skip to the end. Is be authentic. AI is always used for deception, so be authentic. So AI is a tool, not the message. It is never the message. It is just a tool. Number three, AI will never replace the power of community. Let it be the thing to help you reach, but let it not be the thing to do the exact work. It will never replace. In Acts chapter 2, verse 48, is they met every day in the house. You know, then number four, there's nothing like an AI church. There was never a telegraph church, never a printing press church. There was never a TV church. The idea that people are saying, oh, there's a social media church, no, it will never exist. There will never be an AI church. It is a medium to help communicate. And finally, AI is only to do what God has put in your heart, not anything else. So I'm going to stop here and say just thank you. And these are the contacts. If you want a free access to Serenite Voice Pro, you can send me an email, or you can go to the link. I think, Brother Kenny, I shared the link with you. You can share it in the group. So let me answer some questions right now. So, Brother, can I please share the link? So let me go to the very first question I see at the top here. At the top here, the first question says, how can someone who doesn't have a background in AI do any of this innovation? So you can start from being a user, all right? And I would suggest that you can join. There are some classes online that just gives you a background on AI. But if you don't have anyone, I can recommend specific ones so that you don't get, because in YouTube you have all this you have multiple videos and all these things jumping here and there. So what I can do, I can recommend some videos. Maybe I'll send it to Brother Kene, or if you send me an email, I can send a specific kind of video that can help you start as a user. And then if you want to grow past that, also specific training sets that can help you with that. So you're not bombarded with different ideas. So, but generally with ChatGPT, one can just take your sermon, if you have, or your newsletter or something, just translate it to a language, just copy and paste it, translate to this language, and see what's available there. You should get fairly accurate translations, or you can use the video translation as well. Okay, Pastor Benga, he says, did you say that we can record a message with AI? No, you can record your own message, but you can translate it with AI. You can dub the video. I don't recommend people don't generate your sermon with AI. No, don't generate it, but use it to translate your message. You can use it if you want to for research purpose. Here and there, it's okay, but you have to be very careful you try to cross-reference. Um, if you want to generate a video, you can use it, but also make sure that your story is authentic. Don't let the AI generate stories for you, because what it will happen, or it will do, that it will get its own doctrines. And mind you, many times if you're using a tool that is out there, it's a combination of multiple ideas, and so you don't want your message to be you don't want your message to be wrong. You want to make sure that your message is correct, is clean. And so you want to, if you are generating a video, you want to make sure that the message behind it, you are the one orchestrating that. You are the one passing that message directly to the groups. So I said, I'm passionate about translating mission center messages from English to Hausa. How can I go about it? So if you're translating text, right now I've used the ChatGPT Hausa. Now I don't speak Hausa. I can't tell you how accurate it is, but I think should be fairly accurate. If you're translating text, let's say you're printing out a page in the Bible or you're printing out a newsletter, I would say that's fine. Now for voice, we need to review to see what's I would advise that you check to see to don't I would say don't use those ChatGPT. You can use Serenite Voice. We do have options for answer as well. If you can translate, it will dub the video. So what you do when you upload the video, it will convert the video to the same video. To transcribe the written words and then translate it and then dub it over the video so that you can now hear the new language over it. So you can always get that in Hausa. So I know we have up to about 100 languages. So it just depends on what is needed there. All right. So thank you. Let me see. Okay. I don't know if you have any more questions or any else, if anybody has their hands raised. Victor, okay, says, how about unpopular languages? Okay, so this is where that's why we have the three groups of people, and I shared that is that we have unpopular languages. That's why we have the three groups of people, and if we don't have a language that is out there yet, that has been trained there, that's why we have the developers, right? And they can begin to get data about this language and develop the solution, develop a model or develop the solution on the interpretation of these languages, maybe back to English. All right. So we need these three groups of people, and in every way we are different, right? Many of us could be in the user group, many of us can be in the integrators group, some of us can also be in the developers group, but it takes a step to learn the required tools or the required skills for it. Someone says, sorry, what did you call the AI app for language translation? So Serenite Voice. Let me put it that way. You can go to serenitevoice.com. So right now we focus very much on the videos there. I was going to mention today, if you are able to send an email, or there's a link that I can share here. Let me get that link here. If you sign up here, we will get you a free version, the pro version, the free version. And also some freebies to help with mission work. So Serenade Voice, it says, incredible, thank you for sharing. Please, could you share a little more about balancing AI and generating a sermon, maintaining the trueness of the gospel? Yes, okay. So this is how you can when it comes to using AI and generating sermon or some is that always look at AI as a tool and not the source. Okay, so I'll tell you this, and let me give you an example of how I practice before I write. If I have a topic in mind, I spend time to pray about it. I read about it. Where AI comes in is maybe I need to find a story, and I say, where is this story located? I'm not telling AI I want to preach on faith. Give me the 10 steps in faith. No. The reason why I don't do that, not that I can't get a good answer from it, but because I'm very careful by us getting ideas from a general audience to start. I want to be very specific on what I'm asking it from, so what I'm trying to get from it. Usually it's much easier than searching on Google if it already has an answer. So I'm not trying to give me all the ideas of it, or give me, no, I might say, okay, where is this scripture? Maybe I remember a scripture, but not the reference. All right. Sometimes it's always easier that way. So that way, the real truth in the gospel, I'm only using it as a research tool. I'm using it like, think about going into the biggest library in the world that has all the answers, right? You are not going to get all the books to start your sermon. No, You start your sermon and then you go find the right books to say, okay, this book has what I need. Let me find information, and then you write that. So that way you don't lose the trueness of what you want to preach. You still have your core topic. You're praying about it. It's you're only using it as a tool and nothing else. Is it advisable to use ChatGPT for translation? Sometimes it gives inaccurate answer. Please, what other tool can we use? So it's so right now it's one of the for text it's one of the best I've seen. But also I want us to note this is that among all the lists, so OpenAI has a tool called Whisper, right? And for those of us, I don't know if everyone is familiar with it. Whisper helps to translate, and they have a measurement on how accurate it is for different languages when it comes to translating. The top three that goes up to 100% is French, Spanish, and I think Portuguese. Every other one goes down like 70% accurate, 50% accurate. It's not always that high. So I will tell you, say that you will not always, if you try to do it with Hausa or Igbo, you will get some good answers, but not always the best. My suggestion is this is where we can now start working on. If you're a developer here and you want to uh, get into this field and start creating solutions, yes, you can start creating solutions for the future, because these things are needed. We always want to get the most accurate answer for maybe for Spanish or for Fulani, or for Igbo, in like maybe like in Edo State there are like maybe 10 different languages. You want to get the correct one. Those really important parts will be you will need to have people working on these things. And now we don't have enough people, and that's where, as Chris, I believe that if you are skillful in those areas, this is an opportunity to begin to step into that area. Um, so Whisper is one of them, but I think Whisper is more what's the word now? You might need to know a little bit about programming to use Whisper accurately. Might need to. Except, please, can you share your slide with us? Yes, I will. I think I already shared it with Brother Kene. He will be able to share it with the rest of us. Um, yeah. Okay. All right. I think that's all I have right now. I don't know if anybody has any more questions, but if not, thank you so much.